14 days of non-stop military operations, and there doesn't appear to be an end in sight. The focus is on several different Ukrainian cities. The president of Ukraine has reportedly said that the country is no longer pressing for a NATO membership, and that's caused, a bit of a topple now on where things may be headed. Is there a climb down? Is there some kind of a compromise to bring the peace on what is an escalating situation in which city after city, neighborhood after neighborhood is continuously being attacked in Russian shelling, in airstrikes, in missile strikes, as well as rocket fire? The number of casualties is piling up. The damage is increasing with each passing minute. So what happens next? Joining me live now are two voices from Ukraine. Olena Malushika is a Ukrainian activist who has managed to get out. She is in Warsaw right now. We also have Anna Basova. She's a senior journalist joining us live from Kyiv. Anna, if I could start with you, we've seen the pictures. You know, you and I are talking now on day 14 of this military operation in Ukraine. You're in Kyiv right now, so I'd like to start with Ukraine's capital. What do you see happening next, Anna? We've seen very heavy attacks taking place in the towns near Kyiv, like Bucha, like Irpin, the Hostomel air station just north of Kyiv as well. What is Kyiv waiting for? What are you preparing for now?
Oh, the connection has gone.
Anna, can you hear me? Okay. Olena, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. While we wait for Anna, who's in Kyiv, Olena is with us in Warsaw, if I'm not mistaken. Olena, from your perspective, what do you think is going to happen next? You are in Warsaw, in Poland, a country that has reportedly said that it is willing to send some fighter aircraft to Germany. But I'd like to start with your sense of what's happening around Kyiv at this point of time. The cities around Kyiv are continuously being attacked. The world perceives this to be the kind of precursor to a big attack on Ukraine's capital.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Ukrainian capital is the target for the Russian aggression. And what we are seeing right now, what is happening in the towns around Kyiv, but not only in Kharkiv, in Mariupol, in a lot of towns on the east and on the south of Ukraine, this is the pure genocide of Ukrainian people. Why this is happening? Russia attempted to have a blitzkrieg to take over our country in 48, 72 hours, in something like, in a few days, take over the country, then install their puppet regime, which will be pro-Russian, and make Ukraine a de facto proxy. This completely failed. Why? Because they significantly miscalculated the strength, the will, the morale, and the motivation of Ukrainian army to protect our nation. They also underestimated the resistance of the civilians. So what they are right now trying to do is to besiege towns, to cut electricity, to cut gas, to trap people inside inside these towns, to shell them, to rocket them, to terrorize them, to leave them without food in order to make them surrender. This won't happen. Ukrainian capital will withstand their ground, but we need the help and the support of the West in doing this. Ukrainians already proved that we are capable of winning. We are capable of defending our land, but we need the help of the West to save our country.
You know, today's big news break has also been over the last 24 hours, Olena, that Poland, is ready to send its fighter aircraft to the Ramstein air base in Germany, and that the US can decide, what to do with that. Is that something that's really going to happen? Because the United States has reacted and says, this doesn't work within the NATO alliance. Has Poland in some ways called the Western bluff in this whole affair?
I think that every responsible democratic country which cares about the future of the rules-based order, which is at the stake right now, has to apply all the possible means and instruments they are having in order to help Ukraine defend ourselves. For us, this is jets, which you mentioned already, but not only drones, air and missile defense systems. There are plenty of instruments how Ukraine can protect our sky, because most of the hazards, most of the danger is right now coming with the bombs, rockets, and missiles, which are falling on the heads of Ukrainian civilians. So we call on all of the NATO countries to step up, step in, and help Ukraine to protect our sky.
Of the reports saying that President Zelenskyy has said that we are no longer pressing for NATO membership. We are willing to compromise on those eastern regions, of Ukraine as well. This is being perceived as a big compromise, a big climb down. Is that what it is? Because, joining NATO is written in Ukraine's constitution. But for the president on day 14 now to say we are no longer pressing for membership of NATO is a big thing to say right now.
And actually, Ukraine's geopolitical vector aimed at joining the European Union and NATO is embedded in the country's constitution. In order to change this, you need to collect more than 300 votes of the members of parliament, amend the constitution, and only after that, one could claim that Ukraine gives up on our Euro-Atlantic aspirations. This is not happening. What President Zelenskyy said was that Ukraine has been begging NATO countries for
Okay, we've that connection with Olena unfortunately has frozen. We'll try and reconnect with her. Anna Basova, senior journalist from Kyiv. I hope you can hear me, Anna. I wanted to start off by asking you about these comments being attributed to the Ukrainian president, where he says that Ukraine is no longer pressing for a membership of NATO. Is that correct? Is that what he has said? Because if that is true, then that's a huge compromise.
It wasn't. It wasn't about pressing on membership or no. Mainly, it was about getting help, military help from NATO countries, at least to protect our skies, as a maximum to provide us with fighters, jets, etc., etc. It's not that Ukraine refuses to strive for NATO membership or for EU membership. Currently, it's impossible. It's not because we are giving up in front of Russia, who is totally against our NATO membership. It's because NATO is unwilling to help us join, because this will mean that any war action unfolding in Ukraine will automatically mean that NATO members have to join and have to fight against Russia, and this would mean in turn potential World War III, because Western democracies fighting with Russia, and that the world will return somehow to the period of Cold War, with Iron Curtain but turning into a hot phase. This is what President Zelenskyy told, that if you don't want to be your member, okay, but at least you should and you have to help us if you don't want to straight fight with Russia, because as soon as Russia gets on with Ukraine, Putin will move further to the west. He will never stop on Ukraine. Ukraine is not his end point. And
yes, I understand.
Nearly all political experts, at least those I know, not only in person, but as well as communicating in written form, everyone is pretty sure that the next aim of Kremlin foreign policy would be Baltic states, who used to be part of the Soviet Union, and also Finland. We should keep in mind Russian-Finnish War in 1939. That's it.
Do you think NATO is going to send in any support? I understand your answer, Anna, but is NATO going to send in any air power support? So far, they have not listened to your request, your country's request for a no-fly zone to be imposed. We've seen Poland now offering its fighters, but in a kind of indirect way via NATO, via the Ramstein airbase in Germany. Do you actually see that happening? Because so far, there has been no move.
The last message that I saw was about Warsaw decision to send us those fighters, and we all hope that it will happen sooner or later. It's like an indirect way to help us protect our skies if NATO is unwilling to impose a no-fly zone over Ukraine. And as far as I know from my personal sources in NASA, not in NATO, but in NASA, that they are pressing American society and political bourgeoisie to implement this decision. I hope that that this will affect sooner or later, that this will happen. We all hope, because it means security not only for Ukraine, but at least for eastern parts of the EU and for Western democracy as well.
One final question to you, Anna, is on what's happening in Kyiv right now. The encirclement of Kyiv is underway. There are many attacks happening on the satellite towns, including Irpin, Bucha, Hostomel. We've seen that happening since yesterday, Brovary as well. Is there a big encirclement of Kyiv afoot? Do you think that the next phase of this operation will be in Ukraine's capital?
Currently, Kyiv is not being encircled, and those suburbs you've mentioned are standing against the Russians, and in particular mercenaries of Kadyrov from Chechnya. Currently, we are not speaking about the encirclement because our armed forces, along with soldiers from territorial defense, are withstanding them.
Okay.
It seems as if we are really successful in withstanding, although it's a total catastrophe for those living in Irpin, in Bucha, in Hostomel, because numerous buildings have been destroyed so far. And the evacuation continues. Moreover, Russians do not follow their promised ceasefire, and there were several evacuation processes interrupted. They bombed the rails, so now it's impossible to evacuate people by train, only by bus. And you may understand that going by bus is much more dangerous because it's almost like under open fire. But still, territorial defense tries to take out as much people as they can. And also to avoid humanitarian catastrophe. Numerous people are staying in their shelters and are afraid of going out because of the Kadyrov soldiers, Chechen soldiers. Also because of constant shelling, permanent shelling. But if we are speaking about Kyiv in particular, I live in Kyiv. I'm here right now. It's relatively safe. We hear shelling. We hear the sound of shelling. There are air sirens every day, every night. But there have been no bombings inside Kyiv, and I hope there won't be.
I hope you're safe, Anna, because we've been speaking to members of parliament, we've been speaking to citizens. I don't know if you know that India Today has the biggest team of reporters on the ground there in your country right now. So we are with you. We hear your voice. your voice is going out to millions, of our viewers as well. So thank you for being here with us and giving us your perspective. It's very valuable to us, especially since you are in Kyiv right now. We understand there was an air raid siren that went off, just a couple of hours ago in your city as well. Continue to be with me, Anna. Olena is also back with us. She's in Warsaw. She's a Ukrainian activist there. Olena, I wanted to ask you about the NATO aspect once again, because this is going to be, it is what is going to make all the difference, isn't it? Isn't it, Olena? Ultimately, you've got your country talking repeatedly about the need for an air power umbrella, air defense protection, a no-fly zone to be imposed. But there are all these contradictions within NATO. The reluctance by countries to actually get involved in a direct fight with Russia. And at the same time, what the Ukrainians are trying to convey to these countries is, if you don't get involved now, there will be no Ukraine, and Russia will anyway be at your door.
Well, basically, yes, that's true. If Ukraine is not saved, then Putin's appetite will simply be growing. Putin will be looking to swallow more and more countries. And as I already told, that will be the end of the rules-based order. You are right that NATO countries are reluctant to engage in a more meaningful way. However, you have to also assess an important internal transformations which we are witnessing right now inside NATO countries. We are seeing that the societies of the NATO countries are increasingly supporting Ukraine. They are sympathizing Ukrainian people, which, as my colleague explained to you, are sitting in the shelter.
Yeah.
They are hiding from the bombs. They are cut from food supplies, from the electricity. There is huge humanitarian catastrophe where Russia specifically avoids fighting against Ukrainian military and targets civilians, civilian objects, hospitals, kindergartens, medical brigades. Any human being cannot simply helplessly watch these atrocities happening. And the societies in NATO countries are standing for the support of Ukraine. Just take a look at Germany. Before the war this phase of war started, because the war started back in 2014, Germans were reluctant in sending arms, sending weapons to Ukraine.
Yes.
Right now, this changed. They are supporting Ukraine with the weapons, and we are seeing that the biggest ever demonstrations in the center of Berlin, where 200,000 people took to the streets to support Ukraine and demand more meaningful participation on their government. Take a look at the public opinion polls in the United States. There was recently a poll stating that around 70% of Americans think that the US should help protect Ukrainian skies. Unfortunately, Russia is killing on average 4 kids per day. If this situation, if such a pace of atrocities is kept, the societies of NATO countries would not be able to keep silent, and their governments would need to respond to the demands of their societies to act much more proactively. If Ukraine failed in the first 3 days of the war, it would be much easier for NATO countries to not respond and to not react. But since Ukraine is fighting, and since Ukraine is doing this really very well, no intelligent, no military experts could foresee such a success of Ukrainian army in repelling Russian invasion. But they are attacking civilians, and attacks against civilians cannot be left unresponded for too long. That is why I expect the governments of the NATO countries to be reacting in the nearest future because of the evolving situation.
Thanks, Olena and Anna, for being brave and being with us and giving us your voice on a developing story. We hope your country stays safe. We hope there is no more damage being done, because the images of destruction and debris are truly heartbreaking. Old cities and their neighborhoods being reduced to rubble, The question is, who's going to rebuild all this damage as the days pile up, as the hours pile up, and the destruction continues? Anna and Olena, stay safe, and we will keep coming back to you. Thank you very much for your time here. We're going to slip into a very short break, but our coverage continues on the other side. We're going to show you the most defining images of what's happening on day 14. And the images are coming in constantly. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of fake news. But on India Today, we will either show you only what is authentic and verified, or we will put a question mark on it so you don't think. There is always a question on your mind over whether these are claims or whether this is reality. That's the difference between reporting from the outside and reporting from right there in the war zone. Back in 30 seconds. Stay with India Today.